Hey, this is Timur Sol, and today we were doing another speed build video. Me and Huckleberry say hi. So Huckleberry might intervene in some moments. You will need to forgive her. She missed me. So we're building a 6-level tower, a ruined tower. The tower is half covered in the mountain range, so it's not entirely accessible. Each higher level will be gradually more inside the mountain range itself. We will be actually doing a lot of copy pasting over here. So after we finish, this map will have something about, I believe, 12,000 assets, but those are copy pasted. The most work that we will have to do is the ground level, is the 0 level, and afterwards we just copy and paste the general layout that we have, so we don't do the same thing over and over again. As usually, I am using some tiled noise, I am using some chroma keys, I'm mixing a lot of hue saturation and things like that. I also additionally added a small overlay of my keyboard on the left side downwards, bottom left corner, so you can see how many of the hotkeys I use during the build. This build is also slightly different due to the assets that I use. Now, you might recognize them, might not. These are the assets of Mike Schley. Mike Schley is, Mike, if you're listening to this, thank you a lot. Mike Schley is one of the best, in my opinion, the best map maker with the most original and interesting style that you can find in the mapping industry. He's a great artist, who also releases his assets for commercial use, so we can buy them either with a set of campaign cartographer or as a free PNG suite for you to use in whatever software you want. I will obviously leave the link to his assets or his site rather in the comments. The assets themselves are very specific. Many folk try to copy them, although to be fairly honest, I don't think they are entirely copyable. They have a very specific outline type, let's say, a specific contour, they are somewhere between a comic book art and a proper hand-drawn asset that you would use or you would see in hand-drawn maps. So yeah, I'm using those assets in, I believe, 90% of the map, maybe 80%. There are some assets that I will be using from Campaign Cartographer 3, because some of the assets are that you can find over there are relatively similar, let's say. They're not the same, but they are similar, and they fit together nicely. There are some assets from Arkenforge, obviously, but mostly we are watching Mike Schley's assets. Okay, so the general idea that I had for this build is, as mentioned in the beginning, 6 levels. The tower is ruined, it's destroyed partially and ruined. So originally the tower had balconies from both sides, from the front and from the back. The back balconies will nowadays be devastated, destroyed, or covered in rubble from the mountain range. The front balconies will be intact and they will be used for traversing the levels partially. The staircase that was in the middle or the inside of the tower will be destroyed beyond the first level, so from the ground level to the first level you can go up, but not from the second level upwards. Each level will be connected in a way with some type of demonic entity or entities. So this level 0 is, well, it's roughly left empty, but it's devoted for Battlemap. Level 2 or level 1, depending on where you live, will be a small headquarters or camp for Yingohu and a flint, basically a flint and a bunch of gnolls. The third level will be you'll find an Oblex over there. The fourth level will be empty. The fifth level will be a ransacked sanctuary or shrine for Orcas, and the fifth level, the highest level, will be a nest of rocks. If you're not familiar with any of those names, that's probably because you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. These are obviously from this game. Okay, so what we got already over here is I've got the general layout. I got the walls. I use the polygon line tool. I got the floors, which have a ramped up saturation. The ramped up saturation made an interesting effect where the stones are differently colored. With the texture scale, it works really nice. I already got the shadows underneath the wall. I'm not gonna do shadows underneath assets over here. The assets themselves are they have enough outline and enough shadow by themselves. They don't need an additional boost in that. And what I did before a second is I left a trapdoor to the basement level over here. This speed build will be actually a two-part video. So in the first part we are building this the levels above the ground, so from level 0 to level 5 above the ground, but the next speed build video will be the 3 levels that are subterranean. The subterranean levels will be slightly bigger than these over here. Well, there will be roughly the same size as the 3 levels below will be roughly the same size as the 6 levels above ground. So there's that. I didn't want to build a 50-minute long video, so I decided to make it slightly shorter. As you can see, I use assets now that are not from Mike Schley's. These are the campaign cartographer assets that I mentioned earlier that fit nicely. They can be found mostly in Dungeon Designer, the Dungeon Designer suite. Although I actually find that it's easier to work with those assets in Arkenforge than in the Dungeon Designer by RPG Maps or Fantasy company. Well, to be honest, Arkenforge gives you a lot of freedom when it comes to moving assets and changing them in ways that you want them to function. So there's that. The whole build took me around 2.5-3 hours, I believe. And the ground level, the one that we're working on right now, took me the first hour of that. So you can see how important the basics are for me when I'm building something like that, especially when I know that I'm going to copy paste. Later during the build you will see that I'm using the same stones that I build over here. I'm using the same rubbish, the same rubble, the same patterns. I'm just moving them around in different places, changing their saturations, changing their styles and things like that, to make it more diverse. But I'm not building each and every level from the bottom up. Like that wouldn't make any sense. So I already got walls, I got shadows, I got most of the assets. This is now just some finishing touches in places that I see that could use some additional flair, and that's gonna be probably it in a minute. Oh yeah, some additional pillars over here, some additional shattered glass, and I'm almost ready over here. An interesting effect I happens to make made in when you look at the fountain over there, the central fountain. It looks, in my opinion, very interesting. You have this interesting glare from the middle, the white glare. Those are 3 layers of different types of assets with chroma keys and stuff like that. Okay, so we see it's 925 assets. I had some lags over here. You will notice some lags during the build. Copying 1000 assets is a lot, and you gotta be honest, that's not something that happens like that. It's a strain for your software, and if you build more and more, so if you have not only 1000 assets but 5000, 10,000 assets and so on, it has to be a solid strain for your computer. So so I had more and more lags gradually during the build, although I read on the Discord that there's going to be a hotfix for that. So there's going to be a much easier approach towards your RAM that you have on your computer. Now, as mentioned, I'm moving around the same assets that I had before. Now I'm building rubble that is covering the staircase on the higher level. This is because I want the players to use the balcony to get to the higher levels. I mean, they could use their athletics checks and so on to get rid of the boulders and stones over here. But that would take time and a lot of effort. The idea is for them to climb one by one on the higher level, so there's more space for the DM to work with that. The second level is a miniature camp. So what we're gonna have here is some chairs, some stools, some basic living place. Although we are not building a whole infrastructure for the camp over here. We'll do that in a minute. The first thing that we want to do is to build the mentioned before balcony. I'm going to do that with placing a tiled asset and then pushing it to the object level. I'm going to delete that one and build it anew because I want it to be precise. So I'm using a strong zoom to check in what exact place it needs to be. Instead of using the line tool for the walls over here, I'm using pre-made walls from the set. These are thinner than the general walls, so they look more natural. They are more distinguishable from the general walls. They look simply better for me. Now, as with most speed builds, there's a lot of things that you don't exactly know how to do or what you want to achieve actually. As my other speed builds, I'm not exactly sure what I'm building. I don't have a layout, a general layout of each level or anything like that. Before I built, I just built from the top of my head. I did have an idea how it's gonna, what is on what level and how it should roughly look, but I'm not doing it with a plan in front of me. So I tried different materials for the balcony, and I think I wasted something like 15 minutes for that. Before a second you could see it, and I didn't use any of that because it didn't make sense. Using a simple flat color over here to indicate that the stones over here are lower than this level on which we are. So if you go outside on the balcony, you still see the ground floor, what is beneath you, but you don't see it exactly. You don't see it so clearly as you would see it earlier on. And again, copying some stones over here to make it look a little bit more natural, fixing some some slight discrepancies, and that will be it. And again, this small lag over here is because I'm copying over 1000 assets. So there's 5000 layers right now. And Arkenforge, each object has its own layer. So if you put 3 objects next to each other, object that you put as the first will have layer 0, the second one will have layer 2, level 1, sorry, and the third one will have layer 2. So if you have 5000 assets, you have 5000 layers over here, and they have to work with each other. So it, as mentioned, takes a lot of time. I'm adding some shadows, although not directly to the assets themselves, more to the corners or some darker places. I did have some, let's call them shortcuts over here, design shortcuts. So to make an illusion that the rocks are somewhat external and they fell inside the tower, or the tower fell inside the mountain range. I used some shadows to indicate that that's a darker place in the deeper parts of the avalanche. And when you put down several assets from Mike Schley, you see the beauty of these assets. You see how they work together in a very simple way and yet very artistic way. You can notice that each of these rubble on the right side over here, which I'm probably covering in a way, they just fit together easily, although they're not meant to be together like that. It's they're put down in a very random way over here. The whole build, as mentioned earlier, is connected with demonic entities, so I'm using a lot of corpses and gore elements. This is a set I bought on DM's Guild. I'm also going to link it in the description if you are interested. You're going to see a lot of different bodies and corpses in different states, burned, infested, normal, and so on and so on. Some gore elements. These are from that set, which is very robust or very broad, let's say. Since this is a gnollish camp, I was thinking about adding some gnoll-like or dog-like statues over here, but I waved a hand towards that. Sometimes when I build a map like this, I try to be very creative, and I hit a wall in one moment, and usually that's also the moment when I decide that it's not worth it. It's simply not worth it. So if you also have such dead ends, if you also hit such dead ends that you just would think that something might fit here more, but you don't know exactly what, wave a hand towards that. You will get back to that part later on. It's not worth your time. So I waved a hand towards the statue and I forgot about it later on, and I think it looks good. Now I'm trying to move the 1000 assets from one place to another on the map, and this took, I think, 1 minute or even more, or half a minute before the assets moved and they were in place and I could use the toolkit again. So not an enjoyable experience, I would say. Now I'm building the third floor, and I'm moving the staircase, the same staircase that I used earlier, to have something to make a distinction between the levels on the one hand side, but on the other hand side to basically indicate that this is the same staircase, but it's still covered in stones. That's just that. Now, if you're wondering how it came to be that that the tower is halfway inside inside a mountain. Well, magic. The third level or second level, I'm honestly not sure how I should call it. So level 0, level 1, this would be level 2. Level 2 is all slimish. It's devoted to an obelisk, or designed for an obelisk. So it's a slimy creature, a very malevolent and evil slimy creature. You can't go inside from any way, because the staircase is, as mentioned, covered in rubble, but I will make a hole in the wall, so if you are entering the tower, you have to do it one by one. There's only one space for one player to squeeze in. I'm gonna delete the balcony in a minute or two and add something different over there. I'm also using some of my own assets that I created for a different map over here to give a more organic feel for the texture on the ground. So that not everything is the same, or not every floor doesn't have the same type of floor, the same type of tiles on the floor. Every level will have something slightly different, but I'm still working on the same basic level that I built earlier on. And again, same stones. Now this is the moment when I remembered myself that I need balconies on the other side they were supposed to be covered in rubble, and I'm doing exactly that. And B, I need to punch a hole in the wall so players can enter. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. This is my second take on making a commentary for this speed build. The first take was one day after my second COVID vaccine shot, which made my brain like scrambled eggs. And I rewatched the material and I found that it's absolutely awful and it's unwatchable. So here I am doing it again. I also made these maps during that day, so there's a lot of going back to some earlier things, because I missed a lot of things. I had a worst headache in my entire life that day, and building this map actually made me survive it very easier, as it's something very that you can focus on, and you can have your attention directed towards that thing. So it helped me survive that single most awful headache in the entire world. The third level is empty, so there's no demonic monstrous things over there. Now I reminded myself, hey, there's supposed to be a wall, the hole in the wall over here. I had some troubles, but obviously using the same assets from Mike Schley, I managed to fit something in nicely, although it took me some time, and I think it was a good 5 minutes before I found that idea of using the debris of stone over here. We'll see it in a second. Yeah, here it is, just making it bigger slightly, and that's that. And since there's a hole in the wall, I also added some stone leftovers on the lower floors, so a perceptive player would see them even being on the lower floors, that there's something above ground. And this is what you're seeing now is simply just correcting some mistakes that I made earlier. And this is going to be the 4th floor. Now, to get on the 4th floor, you cannot use neither the staircase nor any balcony, because there are no balconies over there. So entrances are blocked, but you could use a staircase from the 5th level to go one level lower. So you will need to go through the rock nest to get to level 4 to the Shrine of Orcas that you see me building right now. Now I'm building the balconies that would be in the tower from the other side. I think I'm going to copy them to some earlier levels where I forgot about the additional balconies. I'm also, as you can see, building the stone overlay for the frontal part of the tower, so there is no possibility of anyone going outside. So this is this indication that this is not that this tower is just like the tower in Pisa. It's curved to the side. It's half of it is inside the stone mountain range and half not. I'm not sure if this is the 4th or 5th level. Yeah, this is the 4th level. There's a empty statue base in the middle. And the statue was dragged off. A statue of Orcas was dragged off to the basement level via a tunnel that is made in the stone wall. So you can either go to the sub-level, to the subterranean basement levels through a trapdoor that is over there if on the ground level, if you notice it, or you can go all the way up, go to the 4th level and find a tunnel inside the mountain range, which is a slippery tunnel. So it's if you walk inside, you just slide inside and you find yourself down there. Bonus for this is that you get to skip the part with some traps and things like that. I think that if you as a player manage to go through this hell, you get a small reward, that is, you don't get killed by a trap. I'm using a road asset over here. This is a very new asset. This is an asset that was made by Mike Schley, I think a week ago or a couple of days ago even, and released in the new PNG suit. I'm using it as a base for the tunnel that was burrowed over here, and to get this idea that it's going down, I'm using an Arkenforge hole over here. And I think it came together very, very nice. There's not much happening on this level, to be honest, but there are some things that could be used as a lore drop. You can entirely ignore that as a DM, so you can say, yeah, this is some rubbish, there's nothing on the inside. But you can also have some lore drop or some loot drop if your players are in need of that, and if you are one of those DMs like me that likes to reward the players with a lot of magic items, this is a good place to do that. This is almost it for the 4th level, and the 5th level is entirely in the mountain range. So if you're wondering how to get inside, you don't use the balcony, you don't use the staircase, but you use a hole in the wall through which you would need to crawl through first, and then you get inside the nest of the Vrock or Vrocks. Vrocks are demonic bird-like entities, more demonic than birds, although it's might not be as accurate, although. So I was having a tough time imagining how such a nest might or should look like. I didn't want to build a straight up bird nest. That wouldn't be something that would make sense in my head. So I went for a mixture of a bird nest with demonic environment, so a lot of blood, a lot of corpses, a lot of gore and things like that. So it's a bloody nest, let's say. A little bit less rubble over here, and a little different rubble than earlier you saw. Some hay, some skeletons. There's gonna be a lot of gore in a minute or two, and again I'm gonna use tiles, bloody tiles that I made for a different map some time ago, to make a more interesting pattern on the floor, which will indicate that this is the nest. So I got the nest-like features ready over here, and now I'm using the before mentioned flesh blood tiles with a brush on the outside to give more opacity and blend, and polygon tile on the inside. Additional blood splatters here and there to make things more interesting. The tower itself is, I believe, 60 feet wide and 40 feet high. And yeah, it's basically ready. I'm just correcting some simple stuff. As mentioned, I built this while having the worst headache in my life, so there is some stuff that needed to be corrected, but not much, and the whole tower is ready. Next speed build will be the Subterranean Levels, where we will have some Dwergar, some Lolt Devouts, some spiders and cultists amidst a cult that is happening. I have an idea in my head about that, and we will see how it goes. I hope to see you around next time, and have a nice one. Bye.